What's up, Bama Nation? Yours truly, Stephen Smith of Touchdown Alabama Magazine, coming to you on a Sunday. Crimson Tide now 9-2 on the season after the 56-0 victory over Eastern Illinois last week at Bryant-Denny Stadium. Bama now one game away from finishing the regular season. That game, of course, the Iron Bowl against Auburn in Jordan-Hare. Bama, with a win in that game, would punch its ticket to the college football playoff, SEC championship game possibly as well. But what did we learn from Alabama's win over Eastern Illinois? Let's jump right into that. The number one thing we learned here, Bama found a run game. Bama found some resemblance of a rushing attack. Crimson Tide 8 rushing scores, over 200 yards on the ground. The College Football Playoff Committee provided the motivation, right? Having Notre Dame over Alabama due to, well, Notre Dame has a more effective run game, a more efficient run game, a more dominant rushing attack. What does Alabama do? Okay, we're going to use that as motivation. And we saw over the weekend, Ryan Grubb, Kalen DeBoer put an emphasis on the ground and pound game. So much of an emphasis that we saw Gino Vandermark at center rather than Parker Brailsford. And I love Parker Brailsford, all-American talent right there at that position. But Gino give you more size, more physicality at that spot there. From left to right, that offensive line was Caden Proctor, Cam Dewberry, Gino Vandermark, Wilkin Formby at right guard, Michael Carroll at right tackle, and that group helped Kevin Riley get into the end zone multiple times, A.K. Deer get into the end zone multiple times, Jam Miller get into the end zone multiple times, Richard Young got into the end zone. Every running back scored except for Dre Washington. Even Austin Mack, backup quarterback, had a touchdown run against the Panthers. So we saw the run game against Eastern Illinois as a priority there, and that's huge for the Crimson Tide to continue developing different ways to run the football, especially next week with Auburn, or this upcoming week, I should say, with Auburn here on the schedule. So that was number one thing that we learned, Bama getting that run game going. The number two thing that we learned here is defensively, a second shutout. How big about that? Kane Womack and those guys. A second shutout defensively. You got the shutout over Louisiana Monroe, beating them 73-0, and then you get this shutout over Eastern Illinois, 56-0, where guys flying all over the field, making plays, getting stops, creating takeaways. Only one team this season has scored 30 points on Alabama's defense. That was Florida State week one. The final score 31-17. Since that week one matchup, Kane Womack has done a fabulous job keeping teams under 30 points. This defense has played good football. They played strong football throughout the year. We saw big plays from Tim Keenan, big plays from Bray Hubbard. Dijon Lee had an interception in the game. Like, we saw big plays from several guys defensively for the Crimson Tide. So that side of the football, showing you game by game, week by week, no matter who the opponent is, they are up for the challenge. You're going to need this defense to be up for the challenge again going into Auburn. So we learned that over the weekend. The number three thing that we learned is that kicking situation. Bama needs a real deal kicker. Connor Talty's making extra points. I'm not talking about that. Field goals. He is 11 for 18, and he's missing chip shots. When you're missing from 28 yards, when you're missing from 30 yards, when you're missing from within 40 yards, that's a problem. I've said this before. Of course, as a kicker, you want to make every kick. And if you can make 50-plus yarders, that's gravy. That's more to love. That's icing on the cake. But your scholarship comes in within 40 yards and in. That's your scholarship. And what we're seeing right now from Connor Talty, 40 yards and in, he's missing them. And we have seen in years past as Alabama fans, missing kicks in critical moments can be bad for you. We saw the kick six, what missing field goals can do for you. You saw in the national championship game, 2018 game, off a 2017 season against Georgia, Andy Papanastas can end this game right now. It's tied at 20, fourth quarter, with about 3 seconds to go. He can end this game right now in Atlanta, Mercedes-Benz Stadium, with a made 36-yard field goal. What does he do? He hooked it terribly to the left. Now, of course, if he would have made it, you don't see 2nd and 26. But if he wouldn't have made it, if he would have made it 2nd and 26, it wouldn't have to have went that far. Yes, you love the most iconic play of the Saban era in terms of Alabama football history, but if Andy Papanastas makes that field goal, it didn't have to be taken that far. So you got to get this situation fixed. And I understand Kang and DeBoer has said, we're not going away from Tall T. We're sticking with Tall T. He's our guy. But how big is the gap between Tall T and the backup, the young freshman, Peter Nataro? How deep is that gap really, right? Because if that gap is not as deep, put Nataro in and see what he does. I mean, Nick Saban, in the biggest moment of his life, as great as Jalen Hurts was, when he saw, hey, we need some juice, we need some life, Saban turned the switch, made the change, went to Tua Tagovailoa. We all saw what happened after that. So when you look at this kicking situation, as much as DeBoer says we are behind Tall T, like how deep is that gap between him and Peter Nataro, the backup? I just would like to know that, because right now the third thing that we take away from this matchup against Eastern Illinois, the kicking inconsistencies remain a problem. And when you talk about going into Jordan-Hare this week, that atmosphere, that environment, that stadium, you got to have everything on P's and Q's. You got to have everything right. So that's the third thing that we took there. We learned here from that matchup. Last but not least, the fourth thing we took from it was looking at looking at being able to have all three quarterbacks play in the matchup against Eastern Illinois. That was big, right? I know people look at, well, Ty Simpson threw 2 interceptions. Why is he throwing picks there against Eastern Illinois? The first pick was where Ty did not anticipate the defensive back being able to jump up there and snag that ball. Ty thought, hey, I'm going to be able to fit this behind the DB to Ryan Williams. DB was like, hold up here now, I got hops. And he went up there and got the football. That's one that Ty needed to do a much better job at reading that. But the second pick, that was kind of one of those moments where you don't really trust your field goal unit, so you throw a Hail Mary prayer to the back of the end zone, hoping if your guys can come down with the football for a touchdown. That didn't happen. So the second pick, I'm not as much frustrated with. The first pick, you got to do a better job reading that. But having multiple quarterbacks play was huge. Getting Austin Mack in there, getting him a look, and having him being able to maneuver and run the offense and throw the football, that was good. Getting Keelan Russell out there, the freshman, seeing him maneuver around and move the offense and move the football and get things going, that was good as well. So we did learn, hey, when it comes down to college football playoff, if there was a moment where you would need to go to a Keelan Russell or you need to go to an Austin Mack, hey, those two guys were able to get out there, get some burn, and get some burn early against the Panthers. Also, we saw other young players get some burn, not just offensively, but defensively as well. So if you were to need those guys going into the postseason, you'll be able to have those guys with much needed reps. So that's what we were able to learn today. That's what we picked up from last week's game. We picked up Bama finding a run game. That was number 1. 8 rushing touchdowns. Big there. We picked up, hey, this defense, Kane Womack, continuing game by game, week by week to show up and show out. Got to have that against Auburn. But third thing we picked up, got to get the kicking inconsistency solved. I know Kangan DeBoer says he trusts Connor Talty, but how deep is that gap between Talty and Peter Nataro? We need to figure that out, because if the gap ain't that deep, let's get the young guy out there and see what he can do here as far as this kicking game is concerned. And then last but not least here, the final thing that we learned from this matchup, getting young guys, especially at the quarterback position, much needed reps when you look at moving forward here in the postseason, especially the college football playoff. Well, this is yours truly, Stephen Smith of TDA, just providing what we learned from Alabama's matchup against Eastern Illinois.